Hello there, what's up, Fantasy League enjoyers? Hopefully, you had a good EU and America's RMRs. I'm back now home, so hopefully, you've noticed a considerable improvement over the last couple of videos. It was a great time over at the RMRs, but I'll discuss that more in my Pick'ems video, which should be coming up in a few days' time. I'm hoping that Valve release the Pick'ems sooner rather than later, as is tradition, of course, as I've always done for the longest time now. Pick'ems videos will be coming out, so you can look forward to that. I know people still ask me to this day, am I going to release new Pick'ems videos? Yes, I will. They'll be up on my YouTube channel, and I'll discuss a few other things. But as for this video, we're just going to stick purely on the Fantasy League stuff, and we'll crack forward. So we got top 8%. We've been on a hot streak as of late. A bunch of really, really good results, and I'm super happy about it. A top 1% in the A for EU, and then a top 8 on the B side of things. And really, the gambles that I took, which were educated guesses, and let's make this like very clear, because typically people say, oh, it's only educated guesses when they're losing. I'm actually doing pretty well right now. I've shot up the leaderboard. I'm in second position, as I'll show you in a few moments. It is educated guesses. I looked at a lot of demos. I was looking at a lot of stats. I was really preparing deeply for the RMRs, right? So I had a very good idea of how these teams are coming through, because I just put the time and the effort in for my job. Ultimately, of course, I'm going to do that. And so in doing that, I saw certain players and certain teams that I thought were going under the radar a little bit too much. And when I saw the price of Searson, and you remember in the EUA, I really backed Cloud9 very heavily, who I thought were going to do good things, and they did, with Exile and Heavy God, which we'll get back into a little bit later on. These are educated guesses that could have backfired, because realistically, you can do all the prep work you want, all the research, all of the demo watching. It really does come down to how the players just perform on the day. You know, like there can be loads of variables and things like sickness or personal issues or whatever else. It is a bit of a coin flip, really. The idea is that if you put in the work and you do sort of the due diligence, then you'll be right more than not. But there'll still be some flubs. For example, a flub from me is Eternal Fire. I thought that Eternal Fire were going to breeze through this pretty easily. I thought it'd be a 3-0 or a 3-1 kind of score for Eternal Fire, and it just wasn't. They were pretty terrible. Yeah, like kind of dreadful, actually. The biggest surprise for me in a negative way at the RMRs probably is Eternal Fire. More so than any other team that I can think off the top of my head. We had maps that Jackie and I were casting, like them on Dust 2 in their first game. We saw them on Nuke, and they looked flat, really flat. Wakadia had a Dust 2 performance where he had like 1 kill in the first half, and then on the second half he was playing their B anchor and he had 0 impact. We had a couple of maps I remember watching very clearly when they were against 3D Max. I wasn't casting it, but I was watching it live, and the game was super rough to watch Woxic just have 0 impact. He had no impact on Inferno either until the CT round, where he got 1 4K by basically hiding on quad and just shutting everyone down. Apart from that, he had no impact. Eternal Fire were toothless. They were really, really quite bad, and that was a huge shock to me. But the rest of the teams did about as I expected, other than Spirit, who, to be fair, Passion UI also caught me off guard. UA, sorry, I should say not UI. Passion UA came out of nowhere. Like, I did realize that they were a decent team. I thought they could get a win or two. I didn't have them down as a realistic, 3-0 pick. But they came out in the gates and they were 2-0. They beat VP and then they beat Spirit. That is mega legit. And then in their best of threes, they played against Big, who went through 3-0. They obviously beat them in that match. They played against Heroic, who they lost to. Fair enough. Heroic went through 3-1, and Tessis played really well alongside the likes of Nerds. And then they played against Astralis in their third game, and they smashed them 2-0. So this Passion UA team, take nothing away from them, it is a really legit run. And I actually have suspicions that they may do well in this opening stage as well. I think they definitely could. If they're beating teams like Spirit and VP and taking Big and Heroic to their limits, then there's no reason they can't beat the FlyQuests of this world. And I think that they can potentially do it again. I don't think it's going to be like a fluke, like one-off run. They've proven a lot of people wrong. So that's how we shape up with this one. As I mentioned before, I've shot up to second place. I'm 2 points away from Nat, who's still at top. Maui and I were having quite a lot of banter back and forth at the RMRs, praying for each other's downfall. He is behind me by 9 points, which is a nice little bonus, and there is a big asterisk on this one. All of the major Fantasy League games are worth 1.5 times points. So you get an extra 50% points. So if you have a really bad run of form, you're going to get left behind. If you have a really good run of form, you can just you know, go to the moon basically off these next 3 games. So it's time to lock in and get more consistency. So here are the opening fixtures. This, of course, always is going to play into which players you potentially go for or just leave. Fury Gamer Legion, VP and MIBR, that should be a close one. Liquid and Cloud9 should be a really close one. Complexity and FlyQuest, Big versus Passion, which again, I just mentioned this before, it's a bit of a grudge match, a bit of a revenge match. They played each other in that best of 3 series where Big got the upper hand. I believe it was Anubis went the way of Passion like 13-9. I think the second map was Dust 2 and Big beat them like 13-5 off the top of my head. And then I think they played Mirage and it was 13-9 to Big as well. So pretty one-sided on both sides of the coin in their respective maps. Fnatic and Wildcard, the Mongols and Rare Atom, and then finally Pain and Imperial, which could be another pretty close game, a domestic matchup where Imperial always seem to do pretty well against Brazilian teams, but Pain is like a legit very solid team. I think VP and MIBR could be pretty close because VP's run to this stage was not particularly compelling. You know, for all of the props that I'm giving, Passion for beating, you know, Spirit, etc., and VP and like having really close games with Heroic and Big, VP off the top of my head played... Obviously, Passion first, they lost in OT. They then played TSM. I want to say they played Sashi in their series to make it through. And who was the other team that they played? Let me double check this. I know it was nothing spectacular, though. Their second team they played was 9 Pandas. Yeah, so 13-10 wins against 9 Pandas and TSM. These were both on Ancient, where Electronic popped off, and it was basically Electronic by himself. And then they beat Sashi 2-1. So it's like, it's not a very compelling run through to this stage. And you can make the argument you only beat what's ahead of you, which is absolutely true. No disrespect to these teams either. But you'll notice one thing is in common. None of these teams progressed to the next stage. Everybody that Passion played progressed, apart from Astralis, who they knocked out. So it's not the same. They're just not the same kind of results at all. But VP are the kind of team that can... Oh, gave a bit of a spoiler there. That can absolutely up their levels and prove themselves as a legit powerhouse at this major. So I'm not writing them off. I think it's going to be a close game, though, because MIBR, Lukoshi in particular, was very impressive to me from what I saw in the Americas RMRs of him. So definitely going to be a fairly interesting one. And then Liquid and Cloud9, I think, is the pick of the bunch. Now, you'll remember before I was talking about Exile and Heavy God and how much I wanted to back Cloud9 again, because I really rate this team. I think they're going to do good things. Problem is, Liquid in the first matchup is a tough one, man. I would actually give the edge to Liquid. I think Liquid probably win this game. And I would say it's like 55-45 or 60-40 in favor of Liquid. Cloud9 could get the win. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say they have no hope. They absolutely do have some hope. But I would expect Liquid to take this game and make it theirs. So it's kind of put me off Cloud9, plus the fact I am going to inform you, as was expected and as really needed to happen, Exile and Heavy God had a significant increase in price as they needed to. It would have been crazy if they only went up by a couple of thousand. So they've gone up a lot, and so therefore it's even harder to justify going for Cloud9 players right now, in my opinion, as opposed to before. So let's have a look at the team. You saw it for a brief moment there. This is a squad I'm going to go for. We've gone for Hulzuk, Jacasmo, Mazinho, Techno, and JKS. Now, there is a couple of, I suppose you could say, gambles or risks on this team in terms of going for Jacasmo. Some people will raise their eyebrows at that, but again, I said before, I think Passion are going to get some wins. Will they make it through? Not sure. I think if they do, it's going to be a 3-2 again. They could beat Big in the best of 1. It's very possible they do that, and they can go into a pretty good run of form. But it is more of a gamble. It's worth it, though, in my opinion, the fact that he's 186k. I'll show you here the prices and everything. So Jacasmo's 186k. I think that's really good value for money. I get the same kind of vibe as looking like an Exile or a Heavy God in the first RMRs for EU, and or seeing like Searson for 195. I think he's a player that's worth more than 186, and I think he's going to get me some points. The other thing is, though, if they go up against some like mad, crazy team, if they go up against like an informed Liquid or an informed Complexity, then I can always drop a chicken on Jacasmo as well. I used one on Chopper and it saved me a lot of points in EUB, so that's always a possibility. I think JKS for 203 is pretty good value for money. I was thinking of going Yekindar, but I'm a little bit skeptical of Yekindar. I don't think he's as bad as everyone makes out, but he's definitely not like a solid player on Liquid. He's not one of the heavy hitting players. It's going to get you points. Like, let's just be real about it. I think his rating's like 0.93. It's pretty grim. Whereas JKS has actually been improving his own individual ratings, and he is a pretty reliable set of hands. But I've mainly put the bulk of my money into the Mongols. They're playing against Rare Atom in their first game, which surprisingly is actually a fixture that goes pretty back and forth. But the last time they played each other was back in July, and it was in like a tier 3, tier 4 tournament. They play obviously a lot when it comes to, in the past, like Asian RMRs and all these kinds of things. And then Rare Atom has like a pretty hodgepodge mix of players at this point with some roster changes. So, I mean, I look at the Mongols and I think, yeah, that's a game they're going to win. And I honestly could see the Mongols going 3-0 or 3-1. I think they're going to make it through. Techno and Mazzinho, actually both very capable players. Mazzinho is very consistent for this team. He's not normally like top fragging, but he's normally around second or third. And then Techno's all over the place. He can have great games and he can have pretty off games. But I think for 198k for a team that I think you're going to make it through pretty convincingly, I think it's worth it. Even if he has a couple of flubs, I think it's actually pretty much worth it. And then MongolZ is another bit of a gamble. I want to believe in this guy, and I want to look at him and think like he is this Norwegian powerhouse, like this Norwegian god with the AWP. He has games like that, and then he'll have 2 or 3 games where he's completely absent. I actually did think of going for like Grim, who was 203, or even dropping down to Floppy, who was 197, and then adding the extra, like, you know, 10k somewhere else, maybe to Mazzinho to upgrade to 910 or something like that. But I decided against it. I'm going to stick with MongolZ, and I've got a pretty even keel team. There's nobody on this squad, in my opinion, that is going to be dropping crazy minus points. If Passion, you know, choke and they don't have as good a turnaround as I may be expecting, then I can drop Chicken on Jacasmo. But I have a sneaking suspicion they're going to be good for at least a win or maybe 2, and then that'll be worth it if Mongols go through, Liquid go through, and Complexity go through as I expect. I think 4 of my 5 players are making it through to the next stage of the major. I'd be very surprised if they don't, and then Passion is more of a question mark. So the roles I've gone for, I've gone JKS on leader because nothing else really like fits great with him, to be honest. He's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. So we've gone for leader because I assume Liquid are going to make it through, even if they do struggle against Cloud9 in the first game. We've got eco-friendly on Techno, where he gets a lot of SMG kills. We've got headshot machine on Mazzinho, 65.6% headshots. Do I need to say anything else? Multi-fragger for Jacasmo, gets quite a few of those. And then for MongolZ, I haven't gone for AWP because his AWP rating's not fantastic. It's a 0.25. Typically for AWP rating, you want like 0.3 plus. So it's not amazing. It's not dreadful, but it's not amazing. But his support rounds are actually quite good. So we'll slap support on him. And then if he's playing more of a hybrid of like using a lot of AKs and SMGs, I don't get punished quite as hard. So this is my team, ladies and gents. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment in the section below and let me know your thoughts. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Valve will grace us with the pick'ems in the next day or 2. And then there'll be a video coming right up for the pick'ems. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll catch you there. Peace.